Well, good evening and welcome to Queer News Tonight. This is the world's first and only LGBTQ plus daily evening television news. We're broadcasting live, and then we're available on demand and available on all smart televisions, including Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, Amazon Fire TV, YouTube, and Facebook. It's time to queer up the news. It's Wednesday, August 16th, 2023, and we are live and literally out of the closet and into the headlines. So many of your important stories we're going to tell this evening on Queer News Tonight.
This is the world's first live daily LGBTQ evening news show, literally out of the closet and into the headlines on Queer News Tonight with Al Ferguson.
I'm your anchor at Queer News Tonight, Al Ferguson, and this evening we bring you the news of and a perspective representing the LGBTQ plus community from South Florida, America, and across our planet.
This is the world's first and only unedited live LGBTQ plus evening news show. Whatever happens unique in LGBTQ plus news, you will see it and hear it.
HOTspots Magazine, Happening Out Television Network, is a nonprofit 501c3 media company in the same models of PBS and NPR, but designed for the LGBTQ plus community. Our mission? Supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community. We want to inform and educate the key issues of our Black community, Latino, lesbian and queer women, trans, student youth, seniors, HIV/AIDS healthcare, business, social justice, and faith. Help us support our community.
We are a part of one of the largest LGBTQ plus media companies in America, HOTspots Magazine and Happening Out Television Network.
Our magazine is celebrating 38 years of the LGBTQ plus experience, and our television news, talk, and entertainment shows support our mission to educate the LGBTQ plus community and the broader community.
Let's welcome anchor FayWhat. She is a radio and television personality and is the host of the FayWhat Show, the first LGBTQ plus morning program, Mondays at 9 a.m. and then on demand for all streaming and social media platforms. She's also a hostess and MC for many South Florida events. Welcome, Faye.
In the gay agenda, South Florida, Brighter Days Foundation's second annual female soccer tournament, September 16th. The second annual female soccer tournament, sponsored by Miami FC, will be held at FIU Stadium, Miami on September 16th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. The event will be presented by Brighter Days Foundation, Inc. Brighter Days focuses on children and young adults with autism spectrum disorder, ASD, and other mental health needs within the underserved communities. The revenue generated through the event will go towards the Brighter Days Foundation's after-school wellness soccer program. Individual registration to this event will cost you just $99. For further information and registration, visit brighterdaysfl.org.
Let's welcome John Hayden. A journalist for 28 years, he now works for several outlets, including Out South Florida, as senior reporter and community editor. Welcome, John.
In the gay agenda, South Florida, gay icon Bruce VILANCH is coming to the Foundry September 10th through the 13th. Bruce VILANCH will be hosting the Penis Talk Show for 3 nights only, September 11th through the 13th at the Foundry, Wilton, Manors. This is a hilarious, long-running show where naked men get interviewed about the details of their sex lives. Everyone who attends the event will get to spend plenty of time getting to know Bruce. The event will feature pizza and wine with Bruce at 7, Penis Talk Show hosted by Bruce at 8, and a champagne reception with Bruce after the show. The Foundry was built with the idea of bringing a big city feel to Wilton Manors, while maintaining a locals feel. Tickets to the show include entrance to Bruce VILANCH's pool party on Sunday, September 10th, to support Plays of Wilton. Tickets to the pool party are also available separately. The organizer only has 150 tickets available for all 3 shows. So if you want to experience this crazy fun, we urge you to buy right now. Tickets for the event are $100. For further information and ticket purchase, please visit ronnielarson.com.
Well, let's welcome Elimination. He is a pansexual member of the kink and fetish community, an educator and community leader. He was the founding president of Onyx Deep South and also represented our community at International Mr. Leather as Mr. Ramrod. Besides his charitable works, he campaigns for self-acceptance with his I Am Enough initiative. Welcome, Elimination.
In the Gay Agenda, South Florida. Sisters in Health and Unity, August 24th. Presented with support from the Age United Transgender Leadership Initiative and the Our Fund Foundation, Sisters in Health and Unity will be held on August 24th at the Our Fund Foundation Hall at ArtServe. Trans Inclusive Group is a nonprofit organization that advocates to protect and defend equality for transgender and LGBTQ plus individuals in South Florida. While Our Fund is autonomous for publicly supporting independent philanthropic institution with mission of promoting a culture of philanthropy, this event will start at 6:30 p.m. and will be dedicated to promoting awareness, empowerment, and unity in women's sexual health, with a specific focus on Black women and women of color. This event will feature an engaging panel discussion, entertainment, food, and refreshments with opportunities to connect with other community organizations. It is an important event for every woman in South Florida. For more information and tickets, visit facebook.com Trans-Inclusive Group.
Let's welcome TriniDaddy. He currently is a violinist and pianist with the Miami City Ballet and is the program director for the Seminole Theater Players in Homestead here in Florida. Welcome, TriniDaddy.
In the Gay Agenda, South Florida Symphony Orchestra announces the 2023-2024 Fort Lauderdale season. The LGBTQ plus community of South Florida is excited about the first announcement of the new season of the beloved South Florida Symphony Orchestra, which will perform in different locations like Key West, Miami-Dade, and Fort Lauderdale. The event will start on November 8th and conclude on April 17th, 2024 at the Parker, Fort Lauderdale. The orchestra is superlative cultural institution serving all of South Florida. Beethoven, Tchaikovsky, Brahms, Bernstein, Schubert, and Stravinsky, plus orchestra will be premiering during this event. These performances are created by trailblazing female composers like Florence Price, Ellen Tofts-Wilich, and Jessie Montgomery. What makes this event even more appealing for the LGBTQ plus community is the representation the community has in these shows. Right from the conductor of this new season, Sabrina Maria Alfonso, many musicians performing in the orchestra belong to the community, like me. The season begins with the glorious tunes of Saint-Saëns Piano Concerto No. 5 and Schubert's majestic Symphony No. 9 in Masterworks 1, Schubert Saint-Saëns. Masterworks 2 is dedicated to Brahms, Bach, Montgomery, and Price. Masterworks 3 is Beethoven's Ninth and Grand Opera finales. Masterworks 4 is Stravinsky, Ravel, Bernstein, and Zwilich. And Masterworks 5 will be Tchaikovsky and Bruch. Subscription for each show at the given 3 locations is available and starts at $111. So you can choose a subscription independently for Broward, Miami-Dade, or Key West. More information and tickets for the season can be bought at southfloridasymphony.org.
We are the reporters for Queer News Tonight, and in this evening's broadcast, we begin with the queer headlines. The LGBTQ plus community in South Florida and across America is diverse. Our community across the world is vast, and here are the bullet points of the queer news for today, Wednesday, August 16th. Let's begin by queering up politics. How Sarah Davis went from Texas House Republican to transgender ally. Sarah Davis is used to butting heads with her fellow Republicans. During the 10 years she has served in the Texas House, she regularly spoke out in support of the LGBTQ plus community, a rare sight in one of the states leading the charge on attacking queer rights. In 2017, she crossed party lines and voted against legislation aimed at preventing trans students from using toilets that align with their authentic selves. In 2020, she joined forces with another Republican as well as a group of Democrats to push legislation that would further protect LGBTQ plus people from discrimination. Davis has immersed herself in learning about gender-affirming health care from medical professionals and hearing from parents about how anti-trans legislation affects their children. Talking to Pink News, she said, quote, "I had a constituent who called the office and said, 'Can I meet Sarah and bring my transgender child?' End quote. The woman had twins and explained that at the age of 3, one of her children began saying that she wanted to wear dresses and grow her hair. Sarah came to know that the girl was afraid to go to school as she was scared to use the bathroom. She then realized that she would not want to be a part of making this child's life difficult or scary." Well, bravo to the representative from Texas. The reason why I think this story is so interesting for LGBTQ community is not to stand up for the trans community, but that somebody on the other side of the aisle is willing to stand up and say, wait, we're going to talk about things that are right, and you're not going to shout me down. Whether it was either way, Democrat that crosses the aisle for Republican issues, conservative business issues, whatever they might be, or like in this situation, crossing the aisle for the stand-up of LGBT rights and trans rights. I really wish this could be a model that we see more of in the country. We could use they could use a greater dose of this in Texas, and we could use some dose of this in Florida.
Have you ever spoken to like a Republican or a Trumpster, right? And like they don't want to hear what you got to say. You'll have facts, and they're like, no, that's fake news. No, because they don't want to be turned over. Okay, that is what happened with this woman. If everybody else that hated us so much would just take a little bit of time to educate themselves, they would be like Sarah. You know, I mean, like, look at her. She met this little girl, and especially that's why I'm always so confused and so taken aback by the fact that our kids are the ones that are targeted, right? Because when you see there's no malice in a child telling you this is not my real gender. There just isn't, you know, and she was able to see that in the child of one of her constituents.
She saw the importance of human life. Let's recognize that first and foremost. She saw this person as a human, and she says, you know what, this is how you feel. Who am I to say I am against it? And kudos for her for doing the homework. First and foremost, how many of us that we know who don't agree with us will take the time to say, allow me to listen? Because we all know often when mouths are moving, the ears never work. And she took the moment to stop and listen and sit in silence and then do the work. And also, to Al's point, she's decided to call out the hypocrisy. She says, you know what, how is that we don't want parents to pick and choose their education, and you know, you can choose what books your child read, but you cannot choose how you give your child health. And that's why I think kudos that to your point, we need more people to stand up and say we had to call a spade a spade.
And most people will stay quiet. Sorry, John. And most people will stay quiet. Well, she's not gay. She's not part of our community. Her children aren't gay. She could just take that information, stay educated, and shut the hell up. And she's not going to do that, you know?
But that's one of the things. How many stories have we done about these laws that passed either in Arkansas, Tennessee, Florida, whatever, over the last couple of years? And we always have at least one time in the stories the phrase, Republicans said blah, 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 without any actual backup, without any facts to back up what they were saying. She went out and got the facts. And now we know why Republicans don't want them, because they don't align with what they think, what's real and what they think. And this is just a mind-blown thank you so much to her for standing up for children you don't even know. Instead of attacking children you don't know, you met one, put a face with it, now you know one. That's game-changing if we can get more people to do it.
Exactly. So don't you think that what we should be doing is trying to get more of these meetings together of the trans community, the LGBT community, with the Republicans or the people who are anti-trans or anti-gay? Because, you know, one of the things that I hear all the time in conservative media and a lot of people in my life is that, you know, my kid told me that they wanted to be Superman. So, you know, if they tell me that they want to be a girl, of course you just ignore it and keep going. But you know, when you're a parent of a trans kid, it's not, I want to be Superman or I want to be, it's something that you see that is longer than a week. It's longer than a month. You see it, who they are. And for all those parents who are saying, oh, my kid told me I wanted to be Superman or they wanted to be G.I. Joe, whatever it was, you know, get to know a trans kid or the parent of a trans kid. You will realize there's a huge difference there.
I'll tell you one last thought. You know, one of the things that she does here that is illustrated in the story, and you get to it, she's interested in understanding the medical science behind this, of hearing from medical experts. And she gets educated from medical professionals. She embraces the science, which is often, over the last 3 or 4 years, something that's been missing in a lot of our politics. I remember just recently in one of our shows, very well-known trans activist here in South Florida, said that last year, a group of trans activists went to Tallahassee during lobby days and wanted to meet with a lot of different representatives and senators, and they met only with Democratic House and Senate elected officials because not a single Republican would speak to them. Well, when you have an absolutist mentality of, I know all of the facts, the world is flat, and that's the way it will always be, that is the way it will always be.
Well, next, let's queer up out of South Florida. Debate over proposed Wilton Manors Hotel moves to online forums. In this week's Out South Florida, online now and on stands as well, I dive into the comments section of the Wilton Hotel and Pool Club, and opinion in the city isn't as kumbaya and unanimous as some would think. Most agree the hotel is needed. Opinions diverge when it comes to neighborhood impact. Dixie Highway is still only 2 lanes at the site, and that road backs up pretty quickly when 5 Points is congested, especially when a train is coming by. Some say those are just hiccups and there is no real traffic on Dixie. Queer News Tonight contributor Glenn Weinzimmer disagrees, saying there is plenty of traffic on Dixie and 5 Points, with 1 lane in each direction. Someone stops to make a turn and everything backs up. People cut through the CVS to avoid 5 Points. Others, like West Side resident Jake Valentine, says he's seen this all before and disaster didn't follow. Quote, "It is all so reminiscent of when Wilton Station was proposed and being built, and the doom and gloom and traffic that was going to destroy 5 Points in Wilton Manors as we know it. No one is entitled to a view or current status of property you don't own. Remember that everyone who lives on a plot of land that was developed." End quote. The hotel plans are still under heavy scrutiny and being reviewed, and community debate will continue in official meetings and chat rooms. Out South Florida will continue to follow all the new developments. You like that?
I do.
Thank you.
I did like that. You get it?
Yeah.
Developments.
Yeah.
Just want to make sure our viewers knew.
This is emblematic of what the online forums, and I try to stay out of the comment section. Oh my God, because usually it's just a very bad place. But there's like real healthy discussion here, and because it's true, they're not going to be able to widen Dixie Highway where it's there, and this is a place that does get easily congested. We do this with the backdrop of redoing Alibi Plaza. Right after we finish tonight's show, I'm heading over there to see what Planning and Zoning Board looks like. We're ready to either move forward or just not move at all on that. So there's a lot going on with Wilton. The community is incredibly concerned. Al, you and I were at Pride Fest last weekend, and we wouldn't go more than 10 or 15 steps before someone would stop us, and most of them wanted to discuss what was happening with the developments.
Us on what's
yeah,
to tell.
yeah. I'm just telling the story, you know.
And did you get both sides? Did you get stuff from both sides, or you just got people that were just afraid?
No. Fear.
Fear.
Yeah.
It's fear.
Well, because we don't want to lose our gayborhood, Al. We don't want what happened to South Beach and what's happened to most gay places to happen to our Wilton, you know?
Yeah. You know, I don't think that the hotel is emblematic of the worries of gentrification. I think that's going to come more with tonight's meeting with the Alibi Plaza redevelopment, because that's where people move in, that's where people stay, and they choose which businesses they're going to support. So in next week's article, when I discuss what happens tonight at Planning and Zoning, we're going to take a very deep look at gentrification concerns.
You know, the interesting about the hotel and the whole situation about that is change. Folks are often afraid of change. But the only thing that we have in our life is change. So change is inevitable. But the positive things that we have to now think about is now the new monies that come in with that hotel that can build into our community, that can hopefully build into better places for the gay folks to go to, better opportunities for folks to now see that we have a good dollar amount. The consumers can run things here. So let's give the consumer what they need. If we make this hotel a gay-friendly hotel, imagine what we are now forcing Wilton Manors to now make it for younger folks to be included in some of the business opportunities. And so so sometimes uncomfortableness comes with change, but uncomfortableness can bring positivity and great things. So whether you agree for the opportunity or not, just think about that and how we can better overall build our community.
We're watching in fear a transition that is happening in Wilton Manors, where I think the train is already moving and it can't be stopped. I was a big student of Greenwich Village and the success of Greenwich, the Stonewall Park, the small Stonewall Park, the Stonewall Inn, the street that Stonewall is on. Some of my favorite restaurants that were gay restaurants. The
Gay Street right there.
Yeah, the Potbelly Stove, for example. They were absolute gay institutions. Today they're gone.
Yeah.
They're there, but they're not gay institutions. And the gay community basically got up and left and went, 35 blocks north into Hell's Kitchen. And Wilton Manors is at risk of that. It's at risk of that. And when you have an average home price at mid 400s, and the cost of rent, etc., the only way that you continue to manage your community in the way that it currently sits is through business development. That's the only way, because tax base only increases when the real estate increases, and the more expensive the tax base comes from real estate, the less we push, or the more we're going to push the gay community out. So those that are opposing any development for the sake of development, thinking that you're holding on to your world, when you say fear of change, it reminds me of ostriches that put their heads in the sand. It is not a winning solution. Greenwich Village couldn't stop it. The Castro couldn't stop it. South Beach couldn't stop it. Yeah. Now, a hotel going into Wilton Manors at Dixie and Wilton Drive, who is going to patronize a hotel in Wilton Manors? Gay people.
Absolutely.
It invest in our own community. Who, in the redevelopment of Wilton Shops, I'm not advocating either project, but if Wilton Shops redevelops with an apartment complex and ground floor shopping, who is going to shop in those shops? Gay people. And that is the way to expand your tax base and protect your neighborhood. Putting your head in the sand is not a good strategy.
Next, let's queer up sports. Federal judge blocks Arizona's Save Women's Sports bill, allowing trans girls to play school sports pending final ruling. A new court order says boys who have transitioned to girls in Arizona may play on girls' sports teams for now. State lawmakers passed SB 1165, interscholastic intramural athletes, and biological sex, also known as the Save Women's Sports Bill, in 2022. It clearly stated athletic teams or sports designated for females, women, or girls may not be open to students of the male sex. However, lawyers for 2 transgender girls in Tucson sued. Next, a federal district judge blocked enforcement of this ban. The Department of Education then appealed the ruling. This is where Monday's ruling from the U.S. Court of Appeals for the Ninth Circuit Court comes in. It upholds the federal judge's ruling, which says transgender girls are allowed to play on girls' teams. In response to the court order, Arizona State Superintendent of Public Instruction, Tom Holmes' office issued the statement on behalf of Superintendent Holmes saying, quote, "This court action is a first step towards letting males play in female sports in general. That means this is a long-term fight, and I think it's an important issue. It's an important enough issue that will win it in the U.S. Supreme Court," end quote. Just like we were saying before about how we need more data, okay? We need more medical professionals to help us with the trans community. Our trans community is highly targeted at every single corner, and the reason, because we don't have enough data, my own personal opinion. If we got the data to show these people that, look, this is not a male playing in a women's sport anymore. That is not how the body takes in these blockers. That is not how that works. If we had stats, okay, real true stats to show people, I think that would be an easier way to combat all these times that we have to fight things like this when it comes to that are targeted towards our trans community. I'm really happy that they stopped this, that they were allowing these kids to play. They're kids. They just want to play a sport. They should be allowed to.
I think this is the language that the public instruction, that I don't even want to finish this official title, to be so educated and then to totally misgender folks in public is harmful, hurtful, all within itself. Because it's automatically, those folks who are trying to educate themselves and they immediately read something like this, they're immediately turned off without even doing the extra work, realizing that these young girls, they're humans who identify as. They say they are, they recognize that they are, so we must identify them as such. And so by just off the top, utilizing that language is harmful and hurtful. And the fact that these folks are identifying as that, we have to understand that there's no extra advantage for them being a trans person of trans experience, playing the sport. There's no advantage. The data shows that part at least. And so that we have to now I'm with you. I'm glad that they're upholding and allowing these humans to play with their colleagues and their classmates and to be in that sport. Because otherwise, think about how harmful it would be to want something, to grow in life knowing that you wanted to be and excel in that sport. And 20, 30 years from now, they'll have to now live with that. I could have been great at something and you blocked me. The world stopped me from doing it.
Yeah, you know, the thing that is most vile about this story and the most hurtful is that it's the state superintendent of public instruction, the person who is supposed to be looking out for all students, especially the most marginalized, is coming down and saying, you, but not you, not now, not ever, and I'm going to dedicate decades in a long-term fight to stopping your equality. Tom Horn is a terrible person.
I guess I hate being this guy at the table, but I don't think that the data is out and it's conclusive that male trans females who have male physical bodies don't have any advantage over a female body. I think that's why female sports were instituted in the first place. And I think there are different sports in which they account for that. And I think the solution is ongoing. And I think it's a broader conversation as to how we can make sports more equitable for everybody in the way that boxing does and wrestling does with weight classes and with height and reach. I feel like that's more the solution that we're going to be moving towards. And I do feel for some of the female athletes that have had to, or cis women athletes that have had to contend in some circumstances.
You know, it's interesting to me because I hear clearly from your observation, I think in a secondary way, Faye's advocacy of we need more study, more information, more commitment to understanding the trans experience as it relates to sports, very specifically. We need more of that. And I think that generally is true. But you know what's interesting to me about this is not that issue. I'm not going to weigh in on the decision making of what the federal court is doing to Arizona. I weigh in, like as you said, John, on the superintendent of instruction, basically the education secretary of Arizona, because when he says this is the beginning of the end. This is the beginning of the end of the world. Men get to decide that they're going to play women's sports. He jumps so far, he makes himself cartoonish in his intellectual thinking process, because he doesn't advocate we need more study, we need more evaluation, we need to have town halls all over Arizona and talk about this this issue, and so we can bring all of the different interests together.
As you would expect an educator to say, right?
Exactly,
okay.
right?
Exactly.
And then when that happens, I think about those words, this is the beginning, and I'm standing in the doorway of the high school in Birmingham, Alabama, and now I'm Governor George Wallace. There will never be an integrated black person in white school ever.
Bull Connor with the microphone
exactly.
saying misgendering, because the moment that a young girl says I'm a girl, her body is no longer male. And the fact that you're using it with the microphone calling that out, all it does is just changes the minds.
That's what I hear here. And that has nothing to do with the trans experience. Nothing. It has to do with your ignorance. And that's what we should be facing when the Secretary of Instruction of Arizona says men are in a wholesale fashion going into sports. First, that's not true. And second, you're George Wallace and it's not 1950.
Yeah, you're in charge of all of that. Scary times.
Woof. Next, let's queer up entertainment. Emmy-winning Billy Porter claims he lives paycheck to paycheck, forced to sell an extravagant home due to a writer's strike. Billy Porter has revealed the ongoing writers and actors strikes have forced him to make some tough decisions surrounding his finances, which includes giving up his home in Long Island. Speaking to the Evening Standard, the Pole star admitted that he had to sell his house after revealing uncertainties around new gigs and work. He purchased the lavish property in October 2020 for an eye-watering $1.4 million with his estranged husband, Adam Smith, who he split from in July 2023. However, the beautiful house has now almost doubled in price, and it is reported that it is now worth an estimated $2.3 million. The family home, which was built in 1970, boasts a whopping 4,500 square feet with 4 bedrooms and 5 bathrooms. The Cinderella star told Condé Nast Traveler in 2021 that his humble abode sits on 1 acre of land and is the first home he has ever owned. Billy said that he is still living check to check after having not made that kind of money yet. End quotes. The former Broadway star has noted that he was supposed to work in an upcoming movie and a TV show in September, but unfortunately, none of that is happening now. So it took me a moment. At first, I had to dive in and do my own research. Now, so I give him kudos for knowing where his wallet, knowing where his pocketbook, knowing what's in his side of his bank account. Because how many of us know folks who have now had to go through bankruptcy, who lived beyond their means? And so we have to recognize Billy is new money, and so the writer's strike, if he's not able to work, it only makes sense to live within your means and make sure you can afford where you live, first and foremost. And then secondly, why not take advantage of the income and the property value of his home? Why not bank some of that money, live a little bit lower, allow the writers to do what the writers do? That way he doesn't have a stake in the game where he has to now force his colleagues, even himself as an actor, as a performer, to say, hey, I need you to not continue to fight for what you need. I'm going to support you and I'm going to do what I have to do to take care of my home. And so I give him kudos for that, because what he's doing is making sure his self-preservation is coming clear and not putting any pressure on his colleagues.
Listen, I ain't giving him any kind of kudos, okay? He's been in this industry for decades now, okay? Get a money manager. What the hell's wrong with you? You've had so many huge successes, okay? So you lost your home, you lost your hubby. What's next? You're going to lose your dog? You got to be careful, Mr. Porter. Okay, so Billy is coming.
He's selling, not losing, he's selling.
Well, whatever, selling it. You know what I mean? So again, you're selling it because you're losing it. You understand? You're selling it because you have to figure out your money. You have to move around your money, okay? So I'm saying there's, right now he could have sat on that and then sold, maybe sold it for more in the future. Who knows?
Right.
But now because of money means he needs to do that now, So Billy Porter is coming here to South Florida. He's going to be at the Stonewall National Museum for a gig because he needs some money, because he's got to make his things correct. So, I wish him well. I hope he gets some money that he needs to get for this. But I hope he has a better end of year. He has not had a good year. I'm feeling for him.
Well, okay, first off, the home is on, that he might have to sell is on Long Island. So, blessing and curse right there. But second of all, he's been, like you said, a member of the profession for decades. He also, and yes, I feel bad. Nobody wants to lose their home. It's the first home he ever bought. At the same time, there's a lot of writers out there, and there's a lot of actors out there that don't have his profile, that don't have the choice to cash in $1.2 million of equity in their home. Yeah. And so I kind of feel, I feel bad for the situation that he is in, but I also feel bad for the situation that all the actors
Absolutely.
and all the writers,
of course.
It's crippling New York and Southern California. So I love you, Billy, and I'm certainly going to be at Stonewall, but let's show some love and support for the people who are also suffering in a much more visceral way.
Do you think he's broke, Al? You talked to him a couple months ago. Did he look broke from that yacht that he was on? Was he on a yacht or something?
No.
He was in bed when I talked to him.
He won't even get out of bed for less than 10 grand. You see, supermodel, Mr. Porter?
What's interesting to me, not his plight. What is interesting to me about his announcement is, a lot of people were very suspicious of him saying this and going public. Lots of the social media, gosh, I just tell you, we in the queer community and outside of the queer community, we as human beings, we can be pretty
brutal. They were brutal. Yeah. Look at this table.
Yeah, right. It was shocking to me, some of the things that people said about him, and lots and lots of it had to do with the authenticity of him saying it. And my reaction was, why would he do this? Why would he say it?
Put himself out there so vulnerable, right?
There's no upside to what he said. So, I just question all of the people that were just so critical of saying, it's a publicity stunt and he's doing it for his own fame, etc. I thought, gosh, this is so hypercritical. The other thing that I think is really interesting about what is happening here is it is systemic. I hear the observation, that there are a lot of worse people in SAG, writers, etc., than Billy Porter. And Billy Porter has the ability to bounce back when this ends much, much faster than somebody in the Writers Guild, for example, that is literally living paycheck to paycheck of $600 a week. But what's interesting to me about that is how many people are living in a just subsistence kind of situation. And it doesn't matter if you're Billy Porter or you're a writer.
And that's the important key, Al, because you're right. We all live, our pocketbooks is ours and how we live. And sometimes we often live above our means and we living for that next job to pay for it. And so to your point, I think you're awesome. How about we live to sustain and not live for the next?
Yeah.
I think maybe just anytime you hear a celebrity that's saying, I have to sell my mansion of millions of dollars and, I'm going to make $1 million plus dollars off the sale of the home, he can clearly use that money and get a smaller home, right? Like he is not in a position of misfortune as like the rest of the American people are who are reading his Instagram or whatever. I do feel like he should have the space to just kind of say it, put it out there. And it's probably other people who are navigating this story and telling it, reporting on exactly how many square feet his house is and all of that kind of stuff. But I just feel like, we are all in that situation, and to come out with that, it's just a little tacky. I still like you, Billy, but a little tacky. Next, let's queer up health. With FDA lift on gay blood donation bans, the AMA is pushing for other tissue donations to be treated the same. After a decade of advocacy from the AMA, the Food and Drug Administration, FDA, the spring finally removed its long-standing restrictions on blood donations from men who have sex with men. Jesse M. Ehrenfeld, MD, PhD, who is the first openly gay person elected as AMA president, said the fact the victory came so recently shows that stigma and discrimination against LGBTQ plus people are still prevalent. The AMA is advocating that the FDA push this policy further by removing similar restrictions regarding corneas, human cells, and other tissue-based products. It is just one of several ways in which the AMA is working to address inequities affecting LGBTQ plus patients. Most recently, the AMA House of Delegates adopted a policy calling for equal access to adoption services for LGBTQ plus families, endorsed efforts to encourage more LGBTQ plus representation in medicine, and reaffirmed its support for dedicated public health and public policy to lower suicides among LGBTQ plus youth. In addition, the AMA and others filed an amicus brief in federal court to protect access to pre-exposure prophylaxis, PrEP, and other preventative care services under the Affordable Care Act. The AMA is working diligently at the state and federal levels to expand access to medical services, reduce stigma in treating patients with unique needs, and break down discriminatory barriers to necessary care. So, I was really happy to see that the ban was lifted because it really affected me when I was a young guy and came out, and I didn't realize that I couldn't give blood anymore because I was one of those gallon donors. It was part of my civic duty, I felt. Year after year, I was one of these gallon donors giving, and when I decided to be real with myself, I went to give blood, and I'm reading the questionnaires, and I was like, wait, is this going to affect whether I give blood or not? So I lied. I lied many times when I first gave blood because I knew that I was less risk or had less of a risk of transmitting HIV than straight people at the time. I was not promiscuous at all. I was always safe sex, being tested. And I just thought, wow, this is, not great for my psyche and my mental health, although I understood that because of the science of it, that there was this margin of error of being able to catch HIV. I was okay with it at the time, even though it really hurt me. And so I stopped giving blood because I didn't want to lie anymore. I just didn't want to lie about anything in my life, so I stopped. And then I saw, what these restrictions lifted and that they have better testing. And I'm glad that this happened. I also want to make a note that it is not just a broad lift of the ban for gay people. If you are on PrEP, you cannot give blood. And if you've had anal sex, I just wanted to read that last part of it. Those who have had anal sex with a new sexual partner or more than one sexual partner within the last 3 months would be asked to wait to donate blood. So it's not a full lift on it, and for, I understand good reason.
Well, I think it's usually 3 months because they say if you travel somewhere, wait 3 months for whatever it is, So take note. Trini lied on a government form. Come get him whenever you're ready. I'll hold him outside. All right. All right. Let's start there. So, I have to agree with Trini in that aspect. I mean, come on. There has been a blood shortage. There still is a blood shortage, right? And every time a catastrophe happens, they still won't take our blood, and that means, and I can include myself in that because those questions that Trini's talking about also affected me. Have you had sex with a man who has had sex with a man? Yes, I had. On many occasions, I slept with a man that would also sleep with a man, So, you never know who those guidelines affect, right? But it also affects the person on the other end that is dying of a horrible disease and can't get the needed necessary blood that they need. Case in point, my wife has type O blood. And for that reason, she won't give the blood. She goes, you won't accept my gay brother's blood, then you're not getting mine either. And anybody can take O blood. So it's a really good blood that she has, and she just won't. These lifts need to happen, and they need to be across the board.
Yeah, I'm not nearly as excited about this story as you and Trini are for the simple thing that you said there at the end, where you said there's still stigma. Mm-hmm. We still can't give if we've had sex in the last 3 months. Why? Straight people have.
What's the why? Why?
Discrimination.
There it is. It's homophobia. It's absolutely homophobia. Yeah. In the last 5 years, the statistical risk of transmitting HIV from a blood donor is the same as a meteor hitting New Mexico and wiping out Albuquerque. It's homophobia. That's the reason why. And medical professionals and the AMA and other organizations have not moved as fast as they should have because of the conservative reaction that they would get from AIDS from the 1980s. And blood testing in the last 5 years is completely changed. Yeah. It is an astronomical, I won't say impossibility, because science is not absolute. But it is so astronomically small, it does not justify the blood ban over the last 5 years. Go pre-2017, and maybe we could have a different argument. But for the last 5 years, it's blatant homophobia.
Legal homophobia.
Period.
And it's
like
legal.
That.
That's it. And so, Alice, I was on the fence with this because I totally agree with you. Because the moment that you have a blood drive at school, the moment you have a blood drive at church, and you want everyone to come, and those people who may automatically know they don't want to go against their ethics, they're now ostracized. And so then now you have to tell your community why you can't. What's wrong with you? And then that brings now another harmful situation. And to your point, there's been so many strides and pre-testing. There's so much pre-work that's done in donating tissue. They sample, they do everything they have to do. So the moment they catch something like this, they're able to move it left to right. But you're putting someone in harm's danger. Imagine going to a church and checking a box that the straight folks don't have to do, but this queer person has. Now the entire church knows. Now the entire church can be this person can be subjugated to harm and ridicule.
And one step further before we go. Before whoever the authorities that Faye has called in to meet us at the door when we finish Queer News tonight, TriniDaddy's story is the proof of the homophobia, because at the end of the day, TriniDaddy tells us, I'm an Uber blood donor. I'm in the Gallon Club in whatever time period that does, because I feel it's my civic duty. And the homophobia that takes place of saying in some way, it is not your risk, but you process going, there's some shame of the risk of it, and therefore I lie. Well, what difference does it make if you lie or not? It does not change the statistical risk of getting HIV through blood donation. So you're forced to lie to the point that they force you out of the system. the homophobia wins. And TriniDaddy is the proof of that. It is a terrible process, and they should completely eliminate it, and the restrictions that they have on anal sex should be completely eliminated because they are tools of oppression. And that's all this is.
Next, we are proud of our special partnership with Sunshine Cathedral, the world's largest queer church right here in Fort Lauderdale. Supporting that partnership, we're broadcasting from our permanent set here at Sunshine Cathedral at the Happening Out television studios. We broadcast Sunshine Cathedral Sunday International Service at 10:30 a.m.
Well, we finished tonight's Queer News headlines with a segment we call LGBTQ plus 1 Minute News.
In LGBTQ plus 1 minute news, let's queer up HOTspots. HOTspots magazine tells you what's hot this week in South Florida. The new issue of HOTspots magazine will be on stands on Thursday, and it is filled with details about all the happening events that will take place this week in South Florida. These events feature humor, music, food, and drinks so that you and your friends can hang out without worry. This week, we'll host Pride Hub at the pub, unveiling on August 17th. Gabriel Iglesias back on tour at the Hard Rock Live on August 18th. And Bears of South Florida meal and wine pairing on August 22nd. Grab your free copy of HOTspots when it hits stands on Thursday to get all the details on these and other events across South Florida.
LGBTQ plus 1 minute news. Let's queer up politics. Catch a special interview with transgender Montana Representative Zoe Zephyr. Unapologetically Queer by Queer News Tonight recently hosted an insightful conversation with the transgender Montana Representative Zoe Zephyr, a 34-year-old Democrat and a former University of Montana administrator from left-leaning Missoula. She made international headlines this year as a transgender lawmaker, Democrat, who got expelled from the House floor for standing up for trans rights. The host of Unapologetically Queer and, oh, that's me, gay guru, Al Ferguson, asked about her journey and her political views, the experience of becoming Montana's first openly trans state elected official, and more. You don't want to miss this super interesting interview on Unapologetically Queer's episode on the Happening Out television network. Zoe, help us understand, and because we're going to use our conversation in Montana as extrapolating to other places, help us understand what's going on in Montana. Why is this happening?
So we are seeing let's talk about the sort of totality of these attacks. We are seeing bills, anti-trans bills particularly, targeting trans people's pasts, presents, and futures. When you take a book ban, for instance, when you take LGBTQ memoirs off of the shelves, you're removing personal histories around LGBTQ people. When you disallow schools from teaching about LGBTQ history, when you ban drag, you are banning an art form that is connected to queer history in this country. When you look back at the way 3 articles of clothing laws were used to target gay and trans community members 50 years ago. When you look at things that then are present, that's the kind of Senate Bill 458. That's the kind of attacks that Senate Bill 458 are doing. When you disallow gender markers to be updated on your birth certificates, when you disallow driver's licenses to be accurate, you are creating a barrier where it is very difficult for trans people to go through their daily life. I remember prior to getting my documents updated, getting kicked out of bars, not for having done anything, but for going into and showing the bouncer my ID and him saying, "That ain't you, Missy." And I needed to get an updated ID that reflected who I am. You see those kinds of things. And then you look at bills that ban our futures. And you look at banning healthcare, obviously banning trans care for trans people takes away our ability to have a joyous life, to have that pursuit of happiness. But you also look at what Senate Bill 458 does when it defines sex as binary. You know, I am engaged. My fiance has a 7-year-old. I hope to live a long and happy life with both of them. Whenever I die, I hope my tombstone says, "Here lies Zoe Zephyr, loving mother, loving wife, leaves behind X, Y, and Z." The state of Montana says that's all fine and good. Loving mother, loving wife, neat. But on the back end, we're going to make sure it's noted that you're a man. And that kind of stuff is some of the painful harm that a bill like this can do, because it tells you that no matter what you do in your life, the government will never see you for who you are. Those are what these kinds of bills can rob trans people of.
Well, we invite you to stay tuned for Unapologetically Queer. This was just a snippet of what Representative Zoe Zephyr had to say. So many incredible, incredible things. And as I've said from the interview, one of the things that you want to hear this interview for is because it is a trans leader that is incredibly positive and optimistic of where we are and where we're going, which was really nice to hear.
That is today's news for the LGBTQ plus community on the world's first and only LGBTQ plus evening news show.
If our community is important to you, share this news with your friends and family. Are you, like most of America, part of our very large television audience, watching this live LGBTQ plus news broadcast right now on Roku, Apple TV, Android TV, and Amazon Fire TV?
Queer News Tonight is the only live LGBTQ plus digital television show in the world that is out of the closet and into the headlines. We need your support. If our community is to grow, we must tell our stories and bring them to the attention of the broader world.
This is the only place in the world that tells these types of LGBTQ plus stories in motion and in sound. That is the passion of HOTspots magazine, Happening Out Television Network, and Queer News Tonight.
I'm your anchor, Al Ferguson, and on behalf of these LGBTQ plus reporters, the anchors of Queer News Tonight, including FayWhat, John Hayden, Elimination, and TriniDaddy, we will see you daily at 8 p.m. And to our LGBTQ plus world, we wish you
good night.
We are Queer News Tonight, the world's first and only live daily LGBTQ plus evening news show, brought to you from Happening Out Television Network. We operate in the same model of PBS and NPR, but for the LGBTQ plus community. We educate, inform, and entertain by supporting the 10 pillars of our LGBTQ plus community, with more than 100,000 a week watching us on Roku, Apple Television, and other channels. To keep the story going, we accept donations with 100% transparency. Stay updated and live authentically with Queer News Tonight.